A woman goes shopping with her husband and spots a pair of shoes she absolutely loves. Excitedly, she says, "I need to have these." The husband looks at the price tag and replies, "No way, love. They're way too expensive." Later that night, as they're lying in bed, the husband decides to try his luck and places his hand gently on her hip. The wife turns to him and says with a smirk, "Sorry, love, but if you're not willing to shoe the horse, you're not riding it." Woman at a jewelry store, admiring a diamond ring, and as she leans down for a closer look, a little fart slips out. Hoping no one would notice, she asks, "How much is that one?" The jeweler says, "Madam, if you farted looking at it, you'll shit yourself when I tell you the price." The village chieftain asked the local performer, "Tell me, if you can figure out which of my eyes is fake, I'll reward you handsomely." The performer stared at the chieftain's eyes for a while, carefully inspecting both, before finally answering, "Chieftain, your right eye is fake." Surprised, the chieftain asked, "How did you know?" The performer replied, "Well, because in it I can still see a bit of modesty and shame." A Sunday school teacher was giving her class the assignment for the next week. "Next Sunday," she said, "we are going to talk about liars, and in preparation for our lesson, I want you all to read the 17th chapter of Mark." The following week, at the beginning of the class meeting, the teacher said, "Now then, all of you who have prepared for the lesson by reading the 17th chapter of Mark, please step to the front of the room." About half the class rose and came forward. "The rest of you may leave," said the teacher. "These students are the ones I want to talk to. There is no 17th chapter in the book of Mark." In a quaint Italian village, an elderly gentleman named Antonio had run a small grocery store for decades. One day, a massive corporate supermarket opened right across the street from his beloved shop. The supermarket put up bold signs advertising their low prices, including one that read, "Butter, €10." In response, Antonio scribbled a sign and placed it in his window. "Butter, €9." The next day, the supermarket countered with a new sign. "Butter, €8." Not to be outdone, Antonio updated his sign the following morning. "Butter, €7." This price war continued for several days until one of Antonio's loyal customers, shaking their head in concern, said, "Signore Antonio, how can you keep up with these prices? The supermarket has the resources to undercut you, but your little shop can't possibly compete." Antonio leaned in with a sly grin and whispered, "Ah, my friend, I don't even sell butter." The first grade teacher was beginning a new lesson on multi-syllable words. She decided to ask the children for examples of words with more than one syllable. "Jane, do you know any multi-syllable words?" After a moment of thought, Jane proudly responded, "Monday." "Great, Jane, that's 2 syllables. Mon-day. Does anyone know another word?" "I do. I do." Me, exclaimed Johnny. Knowing Johnny's tendency for humour, she decided to call on Mike instead. "Okay, Mike, what's your word?" "Saturday," Mike answered confidently. "Great, that's 3 syllables. Not wanting to be outdone, Johnny chimed in. "I know a 4-syllable word. Pick me." Hoping Johnny wouldn't go too far, the teacher hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. "All right, Johnny, what's your 4-syllable word?" Johnny grinned and proudly said, "Masturbation." The teacher, shocked, tried to maintain her composure and said, "Well, Johnny, that's certainly a mouthful." Johnny, with a mischievous grin, responded, "No, ma'am, you're thinking of something else." And that's only 2 syllables. An 8-year-old girl went to the office with her father on Take Your Kid to Work Day. As they were walking around the office, the young girl started crying and getting very cranky. Her father asked what was wrong with her. As the staff gathered round, she sobbed loudly. "Daddy, where are all the clowns that you said you worked with?" A trucker's wife sees 3 parrots for sale. $170, $150, and $10. She asks why the last parrot is so cheap. The pet store owner said it used to live in a house. The woman laughs and buys it. She gets home. The parrot says, "Wow, a new house." The woman laughs. When her 2 daughters come home, the parrot says, "Dang, 2 new gals." They all laugh. When her husband walks in door, the parrot says, "Hi, Joe. You found the new spot." And that's how the fight started. After enduring a blind date for what felt like an eternity, the man decided he couldn't handle another minute. Earlier, he had secretly set up an emergency call from a friend, just in case he needed an excuse to leave. When he returned to the table, he put on a somber face, lowered his gaze, and said, "I have some bad news. My grandfather just passed away." His date immediately sighed with relief and replied, "Thank goodness. If yours hadn't, mine would have had to." Oh, the relief was mutual. A Sunday school teacher posed a question to her class. "If I were to sell my house, car, donate my possessions to charity, and give all my money to the church, would I get into heaven?" The children unanimously replied, "No." The teacher then asked, "If I were to keep the church clean, mow the lawn, and keep everything neat and tidy, would I get into heaven?" Once again, the answer was a resounding no. Apparently perplexed, the teacher asked, "Well, then how can I get into heaven?" A quick-witted 5-year-old boy piped up and replied, "You have to be dead." An old couple was strolling through a fair, enjoying the sights and sounds. Suddenly, the old man spotted a helicopter offering rides for $50. His eyes lit up with excitement. Old man pleading, "I don't have much time left. Can I take a ride in one of them helicopters?" His wife responds, "Oh, well, that's way too expensive." The man running the helicopter rides as a pilot hears their conversation and makes them a deal. "Hey, I'll take you on a ride for free, but you can't make one sound. If you do, then you have to pay $50, says the pilot. The couple climbs in the helicopter. The pilot takes off and does awesome tricks with the helicopter. The couple never made a sound. The pilot lands the helicopter and says, "Wow, impressive. Usually people make so much noise on these rides." The old man says, "Well, I almost made a noise when my wife fell out of the helicopter. But these rides are too expensive." 4 surgeons were sitting around discussing their favorite people to operate on. The first surgeon said, "I prefer operating on librarians. When you open them up, everything is in perfect alphabetical order." The second surgeon chimed in, "I like operating on accountants. When you open them up, everything is in numerical order." The third surgeon added, "I enjoy operating on electricians. When you open them up, everything is color-coded." The fourth surgeon paused and said, "I prefer operating on politicians." The other 3 surgeons stared at him in disbelief. One of them asked, "Why?" The fourth surgeon grinned and replied, "Because they're heartless, gutless, spineless, and their ass and head are interchangeable." My husband and I were in the McDonald's drive-thru. I handed the cashier a $5 bill, and since our total was $4.25, I also gave her a quarter so she could give me back $1. She looked at me confused and said, "You gave me too much money." Trying to keep it simple, I explained, "I know, but this way you can just give me $1 back." She sighed, clearly overwhelmed, and went to get the manager. He asked me to repeat my request, and after hearing it, he handed me back the 25 cents, saying, "Sorry, but we don't do that." The cashier proceeded to give me back 75 cents in change. Lesson learned. Don't confuse the McDonald's staff. We had to get the garage door repaired, and the repairman told us the motor wasn't large enough. I told him we had the largest one available at the time, a 1/2 horsepower motor. He shook his head and said, "No, you need a 1/4 horsepower." I blinked and responded, "But 1/2 is bigger than 1/4. He sighed and said, "No, it's not. 4 is larger than 2. Yeah, we didn't use him again. Living in a semi-rural area, we get some interesting neighbors. One of them called the local city office to request the removal of the deer crossing sign on our road. Her reasoning? There are too many deer getting hit by cars here. I don't think this is a good place for them to cross anymore. Food service adventures. My daughter went to a Mexican fast food joint and ordered a taco. She asked the worker for minimal lettuce. His response? "I'm sorry, we only have iceberg lettuce." At the airport, while checking in at the gate, an employee asked me, "Has anyone put anything in your luggage without your knowledge?" I replied, "Well, if it was without my knowledge, how would I know?" He nodded wisely and said, "That's why we ask." The pedestrian light on the corner beeps when it's safe to cross. I was crossing with an intellectually challenged coworker who asked if I knew what the beeping was for. I told her it signals blind people when it's safe to cross. Her response, "What are blind people doing driving?" Yes, she works for the government. When my wife and I arrived at the dealership to pick up our car after a service, we were told the keys had been locked inside. We went to the service department and found the mechanic trying hard to unlock the driver's side door. I instinctively tried the passenger door handle. It was unlocked. "Hey," I called out, "this door's open." He looked up, wiped his forehead, and said, "I know, I already did that side." A man was speeding down the highway, feeling secure in a gaggle of cars, all traveling at the same speed. However, as they passed a speed trap, he got nailed with an infrared speed detector and was pulled over. The officer handed him the citation, received his signature, and was about to walk away when the man asked, "Officer, I know I was speeding, but I don't think it's fair. There were plenty of other cars around me who were going just as fast, so why did I get the ticket? Ever go fishing?" The policeman suddenly asked the man. Yeah," the startled man replied. The officer grinned and added, "Ever catch all the fish?" Chap goes into a bar and orders a vodka and coke. Barman serves him. Man drinks it, orders another. This goes on for a while until the chap begins to slow down. Barman asks, "Is there anything the matter, sir?" Chap replies, "I had an enormous argument with the wife. She said she won't speak to me for a month. I have to sleep on the sofa." Barman says, "Best bet is to stop drinking. Go home and don't let this argument carry on past the first night. Nip it in the bud." Chap says, "You don't understand. This is the last night." Charlie, a new retiree greeter at Walmart, just couldn't seem to get to work on time. Every day he was 5, 10, sometimes 15 minutes late, but he was a good worker. Really tidy, clean-shaven, sharp-minded, and a real credit to the company, and obviously demonstrating their older person-friendly policies. One day, the boss was in a real quandary about how to deal with it. Finally, he called him in the office for a talk. "Charlie, I have to tell you, I like your work ethic. You do a bang-on job, but your being late so often is quite bothersome." "Yes, I know, boss, and I am working on it." "Well, good. You are a team player. That's what I like to hear. It's odd, though. You're coming in late. I know you're retired from the armed forces. What did they say if you came in late there? They said, 'Good morning, General. Tea or coffee this morning, sir?'" Dave the Scouser is touring the USA. Along the way, he stops off at a remote bar in the Nevada desert and chats to the bartender when he spots a red Indian in full tribal dress seated in the corner of the bar. "Blimey," remarks Dave. "Who's he?" "Gee, that's the memory man," replies the bartender. "He knows everything there is to know. He has a memory like an elephant. He can remember any fact. Heck, go and try him out." Dave heads over to the Red Indian, thinking that he can outsmart him with a question about English football. He asks the memory man, "Who won the 1965 FA Cup final?" "Liverpool," came the instantaneous reply. Dave was stunned. He tried again, asking, "Who did they beat?" "Leeds," replied the memory man. Dave tried once more, asking, "What was the final score?" The wise Red Indian didn't hesitate in answering, 2 to 1 inches. Dave thinks he'll get smart, asking the memory man for the name of the winning goal scorer. Without so much as blinking, the Red Indian says, "Ian St. John." Dave is stunned and returns home to Liverpool, where he tells everyone about the Red Indian. Dave's curiosity lingers, and he vows to return to America and pay his respects to the Indian. 10 years later, Dave finally saved up enough money to return, and after weeks of searching the Nevada desert, once more he finds the Red Indian, now in a cave. Humbled by the Red Indian, Dave steps forward, bows, and greets the brave in his traditional tongue. "How?" Dave says. The memory man squints at him and replies, "A diving header in the 6-yard box." After my son's school play, all the parents chipped in $50 each to create a sweet table for the kids. Once everything was set up, we started inviting the children to enjoy the treats. That's when I spotted a little girl putting on her coat, preparing to leave with her older brother, who had come to pick her up. I walked over and asked gently, "Hey, where are you two headed?" She glanced down and whispered, "We didn't pay. Mom's trying to find a job, so we're saving money right now." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Without hesitation, I led them both to the table and said, "Come on, there's plenty for everyone." They hesitated at first, but eventually sat down. Watching them eat was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. They savored every bite like it was a feast. Not a crumb or drop was left behind. Later that evening, I found their mom and introduced myself. After a heartfelt conversation, I offered her a job at my cafe. She accepted, and since then, she's been giving it her all, working tirelessly to provide for her kids. Sometimes, the simplest acts of kindness can ripple into something much greater. Let's always choose compassion. You never know whose life you might touch. The first grade teacher was beginning a new lesson on multi-syllable words. She decided to ask the children for examples of words with more than one syllable. Emily, do you know any multi-syllable words? After thinking for a moment, Emily proudly replied, Tuesday. Great, Emily. That has 2 syllables. Tuesday. Does anyone else have another word? I do. I do. Me, shouted Billy excitedly. Knowing Billy's playful nature, the teacher decided to call on Alex instead. Okay, Alex, what's your word? Saturday, Alex answered confidently. Excellent, that has 3 syllables. Not wanting to be left out, Billy interjected, I know a 4-syllable word. Pick me. The teacher, curious but cautious, said, All right, Billy, what's your word? Billy grinned and proudly said, Celebration. The teacher smiled and replied, Great job, Billy. That's 4 syllables. Celebration. The class clapped, and the teacher continued the lesson with a proud smile. 4 friends had been eagerly planning the perfect girls' getaway. Shopping, casinos, massages, and facials. But just 2 days before their trip, Mary's husband put his foot down and told her she couldn't go. Her friends were disappointed, but there wasn't much they could do. When the remaining 3 arrived at the hotel, they were surprised to find Mary already sitting at the bar, enjoying a glass of wine. Mary, one of them said in shock, how long have you been here? And how did you manage to convince your husband to let you come? With a smile, Mary replied, I got here last night. Yesterday evening, I was relaxing at home when my husband came over, gave me a hug, and told me he had a surprise for me. He led me to the bedroom, which he'd set up with candles and roses, trying to create a romantic atmosphere. Then, she added with a grin, he said, You've got some time to yourself, so do whatever makes you happy. So, I packed my bags, and here I am. Leaving the store, I couldn't find my keys. I checked my pockets. Nothing. Panic set in as I realized I must have left them in the car. My husband had warned me countless times about leaving my keys in the ignition, worried the car might get stolen. I rushed to the parking lot and my heart sank. It was completely empty. The car was gone. Frantic, I called the police, gave them my location, and explained that my car had been stolen because I'd left the keys inside. But the hardest call was yet to come. I nervously dialed my husband and admitted, I left the keys in the car, and it's been stolen. There was a long silence. I thought the call had dropped until I finally heard him snap, Are you kidding me? I dropped you off. Now, it was my turn to go silent. Feeling sheepish, I mumbled, Well, come get me. His response? I will, just as soon as I convince this cop that I didn't steal your damn car. Ah, welcome to the golden years. A farmer woke up one morning and decided to buy a shiny new stud rooster for his chicken coop. The confident young rooster strutted over to the old rooster and proclaimed, All right, old-timer, it's time for you to hang up your spurs. The old rooster chuckled and replied, Come on now, you can't possibly handle all these hens. Just look what it's done to me. How about you let me keep the 2 old hens over in the corner? The young rooster sneered, Not a chance. You're past your prime and I'm taking over this coop. Here's the deal, said the old rooster. Let's race around the farmhouse. The winner gets exclusive rights to the whole chicken coop. The young rooster laughed. You're kidding, right? You don't stand a chance, but I'll be nice and give you a head start. With that, the old rooster took off running. About 15 seconds later, the young rooster sprang into action, quickly closing the gap. As they rounded the front porch, the young rooster was just 5 feet behind the old one and gaining fast. Meanwhile, the farmer was lounging on the porch, enjoying his morning coffee when he saw the roosters sprinting by. He grabbed his shotgun and boom! The young rooster exploded in a shower of feathers. The farmer shook his head sadly and said, "Darn it, that's the third rooster I've bought this month." I've been teaching for around 15 years now. I have 2 kids of my own, but the best birth story I've ever heard actually happened in my own 2nd grade classroom a few years ago. I've always loved show and tell, so I make sure to include it in my class. It helps the kids get over any shyness and gives them a chance to share something they're excited about. Most of the time, it's pretty standard stuff. Pet turtles, model airplanes, a picture of a fish they caught. I never put any restrictions on what they bring in. As long as they can carry it and talk about it, they're good to go. One day, Erica, a bright, outgoing girl, took her turn. She waddled up to the front with a pillow stuffed under her sweater, holding a photo of a newborn. "This is Luke, my baby brother," she announced. "And I'm going to tell you all about his birthday." She began by explaining. First, Mom and Dad made him as a symbol of their love. Then Dad put a seed in Mom's tummy, and Luke grew in there. He ate through an umbrella cord for 9 months. At this point, she was standing with her hands on her belly, and I was doing my best to keep a straight face. The other kids were completely captivated. Then, about 2 Saturdays ago, she continued, my mom started going, "Oh, oh, oh, oh." She put her hand on her back, waddling back and forth, groaning. She walked around the house like that for an hour. Oh, oh, oh. By now, Erica was doing a hilarious duck walk, and I wished I had my camcorder. My dad called the middle wife, she explained, who delivers babies but doesn't have a car sign like Domino's. She demonstrated how they got her mom into bed. Then pop, Mom had a bag of water in there in case he got thirsty, and it just exploded all over. She spread her legs and mimed water, spraying everywhere, and I was trying not to lose it. The middle wife kept saying, "Push, push, and breathe, breathe," she went on. They started counting, but they never got past 10. And then out came my brother. He was covered in yucky stuff they said was from Mom's play center. I guess there are a lot of toys in there. Then the middle wife spanked him for crawling up in there in the first place. With a big, theatrical bow, Erica returned to her seat, and I'm sure I applauded the loudest. Since that day, whenever it's show and tell time, I always bring my camcorder, just in case another middle wife story comes along. Honestly, I'm completely messed up now, and my chances of recovery are slim. I can't even open a bathroom door without using a paper towel, nor can I let a waitress put lemon slices in my iced water without worrying about bacteria lurking on the peel. Sitting on a hotel bedspread has become a no-go for me. I can only imagine what might have happened on it since it was last washed. Eating a little snack is a guilt trip, as I dread thinking about how many gallons of trans fats I've consumed over the years. Special thanks for the post about rat droppings in envelope glue. Now, I have to use a wet sponge every time I seal an envelope, and I must scrub the top of every can I open too, for the same reason. I find it hard to use deodorants that might cause cancer, even though I smell like a water buffalo on a sweltering day. Thanks to your insights, I've sworn off Coca-Cola since I learned it can remove toilet stains. I've also discovered that my prayers only get answered if I tag 7 friends and make a wish within 5 minutes. I can't buy gas anymore without bringing someone along to keep an eye on my car, fearing a serial killer might sneak into the back seat while I'm filling up. I've stopped using cling wrap in the microwave because it supposedly causes 7 types of cancer. And I've learned I can't even boil a cup of water in there anymore without it exploding in my face and disfiguring me for life. Going to the movies is out. I fear being pricked with an AIDS-infected needle when I sit down. Shopping centres are off limits too, as someone might drug me with a perfume sample and rob me. I don't even answer the phone anymore because I might be tricked into dialing a number that leads to an outrageous phone bill with calls to Jamaica, Uganda, Singapore, and Uzbekistan. Gardening has become too risky. I'm terrified of being bitten by a violin spider and losing my hand. If you don't share this post and tag at least 144,000 people within the next 7 minutes, a large dove with diarrhea will land on your head at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And the fleas from 120 camels will infest your back, causing you to grow a hairy hump. I know this is true because it actually happened to a friend of my neighbour's, ex-mother-in-law's, second husband's cousin's best friend's beautician. Oh, and by the way, a German scientist from Argentina recently discovered, after an extensive study, that people with insufficient brain activity tend to read Facebook with their hand on the mouse. Don't bother taking it off now, it's too late. P.S. I now keep my toothbrush in the living room because I've heard that water splashes more than 6 feet out of the toilet.